All right, folks, I think we're ready to get going again, if you're all ready. Yep. Okay. Well, hopefully everyone's been learning lots today. Oh, echo in the air there. Hopefully everybody's been getting a lot of good information they can take back to their office, the presentation so far. I'm going to talk a little bit about the event side of things and what changes you can make or what differences you can make by doing things slightly differently with perhaps what you're doing today, and just giving you some of those ideas that hopefully you can take back and put in place straight away. A quick background. I work with a company called eTouches. We are an event management solution. We provide registration software and all the other pieces that go around the event management. The whole nuts and bolts, if you like, from the invitations right out to the surveys at the end. I'm not going to talk specifically about that technology today. We're going to talk more about technology in general for events, and even some things actually that aren't technically focused. So, there's a lot of stuff you can do with your events to make them more engaging without actually having to use technology at all. So I just want to explore some of those as well, because those are things you can do immediately. And a lot of us, we're used to doing things the same way because we've always done them that way. So the challenge here is to try to think about how you can do things slightly differently to make much more of an impact on your members, on the people coming to your events. And also talking about evolving. We've heard a lot about changing today. And let's face it, change is scary. We all say we love change and we want to embrace change. The reality is, as human beings, we don't like change, no matter what we say. I work in technology and have for 20-odd years, in event technology specifically. Yet when Apple or Microsoft or someone put a change out, immediately I don't like it because I'm used to what it used to be like. And that's human nature. Even though I think I really do like change and I can embrace it, typically my first reaction is a negative thing. And I think most people are like that with change. So we're going to talk a bit about evolving, not necessarily changing what you're doing, but in some cases just evolving what you're doing so it's not so scary. It's just taking that next step as opposed to doing something totally different. And the changing face of technology over the years, there's some phenomenal things have happened in this world with the technology side of things when it comes to events. So I want you to see some of those things too and think about that. And of course, focusing on what your attendees are looking for from an event. But before we get into that, you might have guessed that my accent's a little bit different I'm not from here. I'm actually from St. Louis. It's true, I live in St. Louis, but originally from New Zealand. So I'm going to start with a little quiz, and I do have prizes. But I should caveat this with no one from the speakers group or High Road team can answer these because I think they know them, they've heard them before. And sorry for the people virtually, you won't be able to answer this too unless I can give you a virtual prize, which isn't going to count for much. But to test your knowledge here, some famous New Zealanders. Anyone know who that is? Russell Crowe, I heard first over there. So I do have a little USB stick for you. Was it here? Yep. Thank you for that. If I've got one left, I'll give it to you. How about this one? A little bit harder. That's the one. Yes, keep going. Yes. I can give you half a USB stick each. No, you can get that one. There we go. This one's a little bit harder again. Yes, very good. Are you a True Blood fan? Yeah. There we go. For a bonus here, anyone know what the movie was that Anna Paquin won an Oscar for? Yes, very good. I'm not going to give you two. And this is the last one. It's the hardest one, but probably the most famous New Zealander of all. I'm sorry? It is the Everest guy. Do you know his name? The first man to climb Mount Everest. I'll give you the prize for that. It's pretty good. Sir Edmund Hillary, alongside Sherpa Tenzing, who was Nepalese, were the first people to actually climb Mount Everest back in the 50s, I think. And then, lastly, a famous group of New Zealanders. Anyone know who that is? Yeah, very good. The All Blacks. This is the New Zealand rugby team. And I know rugby's not a big thing over here, but the New Zealand team, and this sort of leads into what I want to talk about with evolution. The New Zealand team is actually the New Zealand rugby team is actually the team of any sport in the world that's got the highest winning percentage. 76% of the games they've ever played for the last 120 years, they've won. So if you compare that to some of the other famous sporting teams you expect to be way up there, anyone know who would have the winningest, if that's a word, percentage of games of any US sporting team? No?
Is it in Chicago?
It's not, unfortunately. The Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh.
And their winning percent is just under 60%. So compare that to a team from little old New Zealand that's won 76%. In actual fact, the Chicago ones, I did do some research on that, and the Chicago Bears, 55% winning. And the Blackhawks, who we think win everything, right? 50% over the years. So it just gives you an idea of how successful this team's been over the years. But while I'm talking about evolution, one of the things that the All Blacks do before every game they play is a challenge, and it's based on the natives of New Zealand, the Maoris, and it's based on a challenge to the team they're playing, and it's called a haka. And so they line up before the game kicks off, and they do this dance, and it's supposed to invoke like wow, this is our, we're putting our line in the sand here, we're going to take you on. When they first started doing this, I'll show you, this is from back in, actually they started doing it 100 years ago, but for many, many years, and this was back in 1973, this was how it was.
Alongside number 12 there, Mike Gibson.
So not really scary, right? When you see it in that context, you think, well, that's it, and the crowd goes wild. I don't know why. I guess they were starved for other things to look at, the internet and those sort of things in those days. But that has evolved over the years, where as the All Blacks have sort of grown in stature and their reputation, they've embraced more of their local roots in the Maori culture, and they've really got now to understand what it means, and they put a lot more effort into it. Where I'll show you one from a current day, so you can see the difference. And again, they do this before every game these days. So as you can see, a little bit different now, yeah? And that's what I'm talking about with evolution. They took something that was always there, and they just changed it and modified it to suit a better way of portraying what they wanted to do. So I'm trying to carry that same theme through to events. Plus it gives me a shameless way of bringing the All Blacks into, because I'm a passionate All Black supporter, who are going to, by the way, win the World Cup again this year. We hope. So how do we stop this from happening in our events? We hate it when, especially as a speaker, I speak at lots of events around the world, and you look out in the audience and you see people with their eyes closed, and you don't want to pick on them, but you feel bad because clearly what you're saying is not really engaging them. So we've really got to look at what we can do these days to make that not happen. And these days, we're all time poor. We're spoiled for choices. Besides going to an event, you could look at it online, like we've got a lot of people doing today. They've got other things they could get their education from. So what do we do to make these events more engaging? Because otherwise, we end up with this. We end up with a room full of empty chairs. It's pretty much every event planner's nightmare. So what do people remember about events besides the food and beverage being horrible and the room being too hot or too cold? Always the things people talk about. But besides that, what are the other things that people really remember from events?
People you met.
Yeah, that's a good one. People that you meet. But I think what also makes, besides the connections you make, which is an extremely important part of it, also the content and the information that you can take away from that. The thing I know, and again, I attend lots and lots of events around the place. Excuse me. The thing that I really enjoy the most about events is where the content is really great. And that's what I really like, actually, being the second time we've done this roadshow now. The content, I think, that Suzanne and the team have put together is phenomenal, crossing all these different areas. So it's engaging. Even as someone who's seen it before, I'm still sitting up taking notice because it's really interesting and it applies to me. So one of the events I went to many, many years ago was an event in Melbourne, Australia. And Edward de Bono was one of the speakers. And I don't remember much about that event except for the fact that he was a fantastic speaker. And he was on the stage and he had it was in the days where we did have projectors and stuff, but he was using one of the old overhead projectors with the slides that you write on with a pen and then showing it up on the screen. So he was very old school. But the stuff he talked about was incredibly engaging, and everybody left that in awe. And I'm sure that most of them won't remember what else happened at that conference, but they do remember that speech. And one of the, I'll share actually one of the stories that he told, because I'm a big fan of storytelling and how that does make things more memorable when you can weave it into a story. And one of the things that he said at that event that always stuck with me was a great story, was about the NASA space program. And Edward de Bono's big claim to fame, of course, is the 6 hats, the lateral thinking. He coined the phrase lateral thinking, and so he was talking about how do you how can you think differently? And so he was talking about when NASA was working with the astronauts the first time they went into space, and when they came back, one of the big problems they had was that they tried to write in zero gravity, and the pens wouldn't work because with no gravity the ink wasn't coming down the pen. So they spend a lot of time and money researching with a company called Fisher Pens, who make a pen just like this. It's not actually a Fisher pen, but it's close. But it's a nice little silver pen, and it's got a gas cartridge in it that pushes the ink down, so you can write upside down, you can write underwater, you can do whatever you like with these pens. But they spent quite a lot of money actually making that pen, and many, many months and years of research too. So he was saying that was great, and they went back to space, and it worked fantastically. One of the things that the cosmonauts, the Russian equivalent, had issues with was the same. So instead of doing that, they gave all their cosmonauts pencils, and it had the same effect. It still worked for them. So just different ways of thinking, which, again, when we're talking about events, let's think a bit more laterally. Let's think about what we can do to make things different. And on that note, when you're doing badges for events, think a bit outside the box. We all do our standard badges that we've got here. But why not make the badges, if you can, if it's for an event where you want to make a difference, why not make the badges a bit different? Like this example here, where these are all like jigsaw pieces. So in this example, people could go and try to find the other badges that fitted their piece, and it became a really good talking point for people to go and as an icebreaker to go and meet with other people at the event. And again, this has nothing to do with technology. This is just thinking about different ways to engage that audience. I was at another event. Where they for the badges they did they had a robot, different coloured robots that were really quite cool, and the idea with that is that actually this was something that another event organiser shared with me, that they had these 4 different robots with different colours and so on, and then stuck the badge on them themselves. Now, the idea was that you just had a different colour. That was cool, but everyone liked it so much they started to think of these were like collector items and going around asking if they could keep these other templates later on so they could have a full set to take home to their kids or whatever it might be. So just thinking outside that box so you've got something different to offer. This was an event I went to a couple of years ago where there was a different concept here of seating. This is actually, you can't quite tell from that picture, but this is actually the car park or the parking sort of turning circle in front of the hotel. And for an event one night, they turned it into a gala, like the gala dinner type area, put tables out there, they put little candles in the fountain, made it really, really cool, had a band set up in different places, a couple of different bands set up in different places. It was really neat, and that was just using the same, turning circle that most people would never even think about using as an actual event space, and it worked out phenomenally well. Another event I remember where they did something pretty special with the seating was an event a couple of years ago where Qantas, the major airline for Australia, they were one of the sponsors, and in the main room, the plenary room, they had all the normal chairs set up as you do, but they also brought in the business class seats from an actual aeroplane that did the full recline, and they put about 12 of those in there too, so people could actually sit in those seats and lie back and watch the presentations, probably have a sleep. But it was actually a really good way of, for one, promoting the sponsor, but also doing something different that people remembered. I can't probably tell you about any of the other hundreds of events I've been to what the seating was like, but I remember that one because of that. Actually, this was the same event that I just showed the picture of with the turning circle. They did a little farmers market outside each afternoon. So as you were leaving the sessions, between going back to the room and maybe coming back for the dinner or the function, whatever's going on, you could just go and help yourself to any of the fruit and the fresh produce from the local area. Really cool, environmentally friendly sort of thing, and people loved it. We're still talking about it now. And this was a really interesting event where it was in Cancun, and the organizer there decided to put a dinner on in the spa they had in the resort. And all these meeting planners came down there for dinner, and we're sitting there, and I was actually sitting next to the sales and marketing manager for the resort. And as they started bringing these different courses out, I noticed that everything was cold. It was beautiful food, but it was all cold. And so I said to him, is there a reason? And he goes, yeah. He said, we're in the spa, we can't serve hot food because the aromas will go through the spa and it will affect us doing business in here. So if we do a dinner in here, it's always cold. So there's no food aromas or anything going through. But the food they had was just spectacular. And again, something really, really different that made everybody that was there sit up and think, wow, how cool was that? This, I want to talk about what's been the biggest change, though, in the last 10 years when we talk about events. So here's a picture of an event from 2005. Your typical audience looking out at what's going on. Take that back a couple of years ago to 2013 when everybody started to have smartphones. And look at the difference. That's what we're seeing today at events. It used to be, as a planner, you'd say to somebody, you get the DMC or whoever's up there doing the caretaking or the housekeeping notes rather, would say, please everybody turn your phones off, we don't have any distractions. These days you're encouraged to put your phones on and to start tweeting and interacting with social media and so on. So whether we like it or not, we have to embrace that. We have to embrace it. This is the way of the world. We might not like that people can do that. The thing is they're going to do it regardless. So let's embrace it and make it part of our events and work out ways that we can engage the people with this sort of technology. So if anyone's doing events now and they don't allow mobile phones to be turned on, etc. And of course, you can have them put to mute so that you don't hear all the different ringtones going on. But you really should be embracing it. Because the web's very, very different now. Back only a few years ago, the only way to get to the internet was through your computer on your desk or your laptop. That was pretty much the only way you got to the internet, yeah? These days, look at how many different ways you can get there from a computer, from a laptop, from a tablet, from a smartphone, from your TV. We counted up the other day how many things in our house we've got connected to our wireless network. It's 22 items in one household, that are connected to Wi-Fi. It's the way of the world. It's crazy. But we have to accept that that's what it is, and we have to make sure that we cater to that because, you've got all these different operating systems now that all work through the web and all these different ways to get there. One of the things when you're talking about, event technology specifically, that's really important is how does what you're putting out there to the public, how does it look from a mobile device? Has anyone heard the term responsive websites? Yeah, who has a responsive website in the audience here? 3, that's pretty good. 4, that's pretty good. If I asked that question maybe 12 months ago, there would have been probably nobody. And for those that aren't sure what a responsive website is, it just means a website it doesn't matter what device you look at it on, whether it's your computer on your desk, whether it's your smartphone, whether it's your tablet, the actual website resizes accordingly and changes the way that you navigate and everything else automatically. You don't have to have someone design that separately for each one of those devices. It does it by itself automatically. So that's something that really is a must. These days, if I go to a website and it's not responsive and I'm on my phone, I tend to not want to do business with those people because it's not easy for me to look at, and there's so many other websites out there that are responsive. There's also, a lot of people doing these big long websites that are, you click on the start of it or the home page, and instead of going to another tab, it just keeps going down the website. And that's pretty cool too, because again, it's giving you that access to something on your phone, because people are used to browsing through their phone, just flicking their finger and keeping going down. It's kind of funny because when websites first come out, people did start making big, long websites. Everybody said, no, we don't like that. We want to go to a different tab because we don't want to keep scrolling down. Now we've sort of come full circle. And now we're quite happy to scroll down because we're used to doing that with our phones. So again, when you're looking at an event website, the example I've put here is from eTouches, actually, just doing a registration. But that's the screen on the left that you see is what you'd see if you're registering from your computer. The screen on the right is exactly the same as what you see if you're registering from your phone or a smaller device. So it just automatically resizes and lets you have a better experience. When someone first told me that people would want to register via their phones, I thought they were crazy. I think, why would you want to try to register from this little 3-4 inch screen when you could do it from a computer where you've got all that content much, much easier to see? But over the last couple of years, and as I've talked to an awful lot of clients and prospects, I've come to agree with them that actually you're right. It's all about convenience. It's about when I'm leaving the office and I'm jumping on the train to go home from work, I want to be able to register then, because that's when I think about, oh, that's right, I wanted to register for that event. I want to be able to do that on my phone without having to keep, pushing scrolling with my fingers and making the screen bigger. I want to be able to do that in a nice, friendly environment that allows me to see the information exactly how I want it. So even though it might have seemed like a crazy idea when I was first told about it, now I think it's becoming mainstream. In fact, even a lot of the RFPs that we're answering these days, it's not even a would like, it's a must-have. Must be responsive registration. So many people are obviously looking for it, and something to talk to your membership bases about too. Is this the sort of thing that they'd like? If your demographics don't suit that, maybe not. But if it does, then something you probably should be adhering to pretty quickly. This is an example of these days at most events you see a mobile app that goes to the events. Who here does a mobile app for their major event? Most of you, yeah? Again, if I'd asked that question maybe 2 years ago, probably not many. There's the early adopters, then there's on the bell curve, there's the most of us, and then the late adopters at the end. I think these days it's mainstream or considered mainstream to have a mobile app for your main event. Obviously, there's many benefits from doing that. You can cut down your printing costs for your program guides and so on. But that's not the way you should be looking at it, not just from a cost-saving perspective. It should be from an audience or an attendee engagement perspective. What's going to get the people at the event more engaged with you? Certainly not a program guide that they flick through and they look at the pages of what's coming up next. It's going to be something that they've got on their phone that they can actually interact with the people at the event, the speakers, the other delegates, the other members, the organizer, whatever. But those are the sort of things when you're starting to look at why have a mobile app. They're the sort of things you need to start asking. What do we want to get out of it? So is it purely to save costs? And I'd say if that's the only way you're looking at it, then it's probably not the right way. What sort of things should you have on there? What are your audience going to want? It could be at your major event they want to have a floor plan to see the exhibition hall, yeah, to see where the exhibitors are. These days, most mobile apps will offer you some form of wayfinding. So when you're on the exhibit floor, it'll tell you where you are, and you can say, I want to go to booth 8550, and it will tell you how to get there and show you like a map how to get there. That sort of stuff is pretty mainstream these days when it comes to a mobile app. Being able to connect to the other folks at the event, being able to message the other attendees. I'll never forget, I was at an event, going back probably 12, 15 years ago now, when I first saw mobile technology being used. And these were one of the early players in the space, a company called SpotMe. And they didn't have a mobile app as such, but they had and they're still around. In fact, they've got a headquarters here in Chicago for the US, actually. They're a Swiss-based company. But they had this pretty cool thing where you could plug in, you could see who the attendees were, and you could then plug into there that you wanted to meet a certain person, and everybody had a photo next to them because you got your photo taken when you turned up at the event. So you could put into this app who you wanted to meet with, and when you're in the networking functions or just walking around, if those people, the person that you put in there you wanted to meet with, when they got within about 10 yards of you, this thing would start vibrating and would show their picture on there and say, hey, so-and-so's 10 yards away from you, and then 5 yards, and so it was a great way to know when they were coming up. Now, some of the other people got a bit creative with it, and I remember someone telling me at one of the breakfast one morning that there was some terrible snoring going on in the next room, and they'd actually managed to use the app to find out who the person was snoring, so they could tell them next morning that they wanted to shift rooms. But that sort of technology is really, really useful to an attendee. The evolution of this has been quite phenomenal. These days there's gamification where you're playing games on the app as a way to engage the attendees more. It might be that if you've got an exhibition going on, that if they visit every booth, they unlock a piece of a puzzle that will ultimately give them a prize. And so the idea is to get them to go to the booth so they get more information, so they get the ultimate prize. Just one way to engage. Another event I went to on the badges, they had a number for every attendee, and you had to put that number into the mobile app, and the one who put the most numbers in got a prize like a free weekend at a resort or something like that. So, many different ways to engage the people by just simply doing it through the app. And if you talk to anyone that provides mobile apps, tell them, hey, look, and if you're not sure, just say, look, I'm not sure what we can do. Can you tell me the sort of things that your clients are doing to give you some ideas? Because it's always a challenge. We don't know what we don't know. So unless you've seen that or used that or done it before, you don't always know what to ask for. So, use the knowledge of the people and the vendors you're working with to help you with that. Most people are more than happy to say, well, yeah, one of our clients did this and they loved it, and so on. And I could go on and on about mobile apps because there's a ton of application for the way these things should be used, or can be used. And there's a couple of differences too with the way that apps can be deployed. There's I think we all are more familiar with the native apps, which is the app that you go to the Apple Store or the Google Play, or wherever you want to go and download that, and it sits on your phone. And then there's the web-based apps, which are the apps that use your browser, and they look like an app on the phone, but they're actually being accessed through the internet. They're not something that you actually download to your phone. Both are great. Both have got their pros and cons. The web-based apps typically are much cheaper, much faster to deploy because they're just really a cut-down web page. However, they rely on the internet generally to be working properly, so that you can access information. And they can't take control of some of the things in the phone, like the camera and the location services and the push notifications and so on, which the native apps can. So when you're looking at an app for your association, think about what's going to be best for you. Is it going to be a native app? Is it going to be a web-based app? Or is it a combination of both? And I'd also challenge you to think about not just getting an app for your major event, because these days, when apps first came out for events, they were very, very expensive, $20,000, $30,000 plus for per event. So most places or most organizations only had one app that they'd use for their major event, and that was it. These days, those prices have come down an awful lot. They're still, for a native app, they're still averaging $3,000 to $5,000 as a general rule of thumb per event. But you'll find that some companies are now doing volume discounts. They're also doing one app with multi events inside it, so that You can have one branded app, and then when someone goes and downloads that, they can choose the event that they want to download. So there's multiple events inside one app. That's another option that can bring the price down as well. But even going to a web-based app can make it very, very cost effective. And so think about, could you actually use an app at just about all of your events? Why not? If it's cost effective enough, why not? Because even if you've got an event for 20 people, it's still good to be able to go for the attendee to be able to go on their phone and look up the agenda and look up all those things without having to go back to the program guide or go back on the website to try to find that information. And some of the things from a system that you should be looking at in terms of your event management. This is a report, just to give an example, showing the registration times by hour. So why is that important? Well, it goes back to what what Suzanne was talking about, knowing your member and so on, and that a common theme we've been hearing all day. If you look at your event and find that most of the people in this particular example here, most people were registering between 3 and 4 a.m. Kind of a crazy time to be registering, but however, if that's what suits that audience, why would you send out your email invitations and your follow-ups at any other time than to correlate with that? So you might be told by your marketing team that 2 o'clock on a Tuesday is the best time to send an email blast. Whatever stats they've come up with. But I would suggest look at your own statistics as to what suits your membership base best, and base your marketing strategies around that, not just what people traditionally say across the board, because what applies to one person doesn't always apply to another. This is another interesting report that I'm not sure if you get from your existing systems, but if you don't, you should try to see if you can. The incomplete registrations. So the people that started registering for the event but didn't finish. So these are the people that they started the process and maybe they got distracted with something else. They didn't finish for whatever reason. So, and they might have forgotten to come back and continue that registration process. So for you as the organizer of the event, extremely valuable to know that, hey, we've got 48 people that didn't actually finish that process. The first thing you should do is get your sales or your marketing team on the phone, calling those people and see if you can help them, because you're going to have all their details right there. Find out what's the issue. Did you have some trouble? Would you like a hand to be able to do that? So, or actually some systems can automate that, so you get an email sent out automatically to those people as well. It's another option. Changing tack a little bit here. Furniture for events. Who would think that furniture would be affected by technology? But it is. How many people now engage with their events have actually got furniture that's got charging stations around? Anyone? Yeah? Yeah, it's something that, what's the number one problem that we all face when we're on our mobile phones and that? It's lack of battery, right? No one's come up with this great battery life yet. It gets drained so quick, and we're encouraging people now to use our smartphones and our tablets and so on as much as possible during an event. All that's doing is draining the battery quicker. So how do you make the attendee happier that they can actually charge that, instead of, like at the airport, running around trying to find a power outlet that they can plug into? I've lost count of the amount of times I walk around airports and see all the people sitting around the walls, plugged in. These days they're getting a little bit better, but still, there's still a massive shortage of outlets or power outlets at airports. But back to your event world, why not use furniture that's functional and also got those charging stations built into it? This was actually one I saw at an event I was at recently, and I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, it's a really nice looking piece of furniture, but it's also really, really functional too. And there was tons of people using it, sitting there charging all their bits and pieces up. Another one I saw at the same event was like a tower, and it had like a locker. So you had a little combination. You could make your own combination, and like a safe in a hotel room, put your phone in, go into the session, and come back out knowing no one's going to steal it because it's in there being charged. So a lot of people won't put their phones on this, or they'll sit there waiting because they don't want to leave their phone alone. So having these lockers and that is another really ideal way of doing it around the event floor. And several companies are offering this sort of stuff now. Hybrid events, and this is, we're a hybrid event right now. We're doing partial live, partial streaming. They're becoming commonplace. This is the way that people want to have the option. Sometimes it makes sense to be in person. Sometimes it makes sense just to join virtually. This was an example I saw, probably one of the better examples of an exhibition that was virtual, or that was, sorry, was a hybrid, where they had all the exhibitors around the outside of this main floor area. And this was a company called the Expo Group that put this on. And in the middle there, they had a professional presenter who was doing interviews every half hour, and those interviews were being streamed live. And so the people who were attending virtually could watch all those interviews, but even the people who were at the event could sit down on the chairs in that here and watch those presentations as well. So it was a really truly engaging way for both the virtual and the live attendees. There's many different ways to offer hybrid events, of course, and you know they don't come without cost with the AV setup and everything else. But if you think that's a way that you're going to engage more people at your event, then I'd certainly suggest exploring it. This was an event that I was at just recently, actually. It was a IBM event, and they had this social wall that took up, gosh, probably a good, it must have been about 30 foot long. It was huge, and the traffic that was around this was phenomenal, because you can't quite see from that picture because it's far away. But there was about 30 different screens that were on this thing, showing all different things from social media to upcoming sessions to this to that. And if we zoom in a bit, one of the boards here was a social leaderboard. And so it was showing, and it was constantly changing, of course, based on who was the person that was getting the most retweets with the tweets they were sending out, who was the person that was getting the most likes on Facebook, or whatever it might be. You know, there's the people that make these sort of things or make the software for these sort of things can control all sorts of different things that you want to control from, you know, to engage the audience. The people that were crowded around this was phenomenal. There was, besides, you know, there was being so many sessions to go to, this became a focal point where everybody was there and they're taking photos of each other with, you know, hey, I'm the leader now, and they take a photo and share that back on there so they got another retweet and so on. So, you know, it was become, again, talking about gamification, it became almost a game by default, but also very, very engaging for people to see that. Beacons. Anyone use beacons at events yet? You have? Great. Great. Beacons is one of the newer technologies that we're seeing in the event space. And for those of you that aren't aware what they are, the beacon is the thing on the right-hand side. It looks like a rock, but they come in different shapes and sizes. But the idea is that they send out a low-frequency Bluetooth message that, for an exhibitor, can you imagine, you know, I've got an exhibition booth at the event, and I've bought my beacon, which only run in some cases only run to a few cents, and I can program that to send information out about my products. So the ideal scenario with this sort of thing is, and retail have been using this for a few years, the ideal thing is that as people walk past that have the app that will talk to this, walk past, and as they're walking past, they'll get, like this person has, hey, welcome, Lucas, you thirsty? Get one drink for only $2. So pushing messages out to the attendees, but also gathering information. There's so many different applications for this. We're only starting to scratch the surface in the event space. Venues are starting to put them in as ways to find your way around, to push maps and information out where you are in the venue and so on. So, you know, some really, really cool different things you can do with these. And again, it's only just starting. So, you know, RFID was sort of, you know, touted a few years back as being the next big thing in terms of being able to have these radio frequencies identifying when people walk through like they have in the retail outlets, those big pillars you walk back through and they beep at you if you steal something. Not that I steal anything, but you know, when you have one of those tags on your clothes and it sets it off. That really didn't take off in the event world to date. You know, we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence for it now, but certainly these beacons are starting to become very, very popular. So I'd suggest having a look at that if you aren't already doing it. I've got another video here for you. If you want to go, you know, talking about doing something different for the attendees, this is an example of an invitation. Now, this was actually for a wedding, but think about this for some of your high-profile events, sending out an invitation.
funny. Where are we? What is this, the Matrix?
No, silly, we're in our wedding card. Look, there's our guest.
Oh, look at the card in detail. We'd love to have you there. Please send in your RSVP.
We both really look forward to spending our big day with you.
Cool, right? Just now, an easy way to add another $10,000 to your wedding costs. But you know, I'm sure it won't be too long before we see that sort of thing becoming more and more mainstream in the event world, where invitations don't become that static one-way piece of information. They become engaging. So different things to think about. Actually, a guy who's a very successful event organizer told me years ago that one of the events they did for their clients, instead of sending invitations out, they had someone like the telegraph man personally go and deliver the invitation via a song at the door. And it was not using technology, but a great way to engage people and really think, I want to go to that event. It's going to be cool. So again, just thinking a bit differently. This slide gives you an idea of, I'm going to tell you the idea, but it's, you know, we've been talking in some of the other earlier discussions about big data and data analysis and what do we do with data and so on. One of the things that we are great at doing is collecting data. One of the things we're really bad at doing is actually analysing and using that data for anything meaningful. And if we're going to get to know our personas and know our people, we need to know this. We need to know things about them. And events are such a great place to capture data. This is an example from a system called VivaStream, which does data analytics in the event space, and they've just started up a couple of years back. But what they've got here is the organizer will say, hey, these are the key things that we're interested in knowing about the attendees, about this, you know, whether it be the subject might be social media or advocacy or representation or, you know, whatever. It could be you make up the topics that you're interested in being able to understand who are the people that are most engaged with those topics that are coming to your event. So once you've got that set, then they assign scores to each of those things. So if you visit a booth that's selling social media tools, you might get 10 points. If you go to a session that's about social media, you might get assigned 12 points. If you are a speaker about social media, you might get 20 points. So there's all these different ways you can set these rules up. So at the end of the day, and these guys are taking feeds from the event system, from the mobile app, from the email automation systems, from every system that's going on around the event, social media, public feeds, everything. And they're funneling that into their system that's going to give you these engagement scores for each attendee. So at the end of the event, you know that this person scored 268 points on the topic of CRM and loyalty. So that person's extremely engaged in that. Now, as an organizer, if I'm selling something to do with CRM and loyalty, that's invaluable information for me to know, especially if we relate that back to our member base. I know to target them with things about that particular topic because that's what they're interested in. Taking that a step further, putting it into your association management system or Salesforce or whatever CRM you're using, being able to have it in there so you can see what that person did at that event, visited 16 booths about that particular topic, attended 11 sessions about that topic, and so on. And here's a thought: what about, you know, the exhibitors who come to the event? They're always looking for value, right? They want to see an ROI of spending money to be an exhibitor. Well, you can tell them at the end of the event, hey, 42 people have visited your booth. Big deal. They know that. They've probably captured that information already. But what about the 360 who didn't visit that booth but were really, really interested in the topic or the product or service that you were selling because you know that? And so those people didn't come near you, and you would never know that they didn't come near you unless this data was being captured. So being able to sell that information back to the exhibitors, you know, for me as an exhibitor, that would be a tremendous return on investment, knowing that besides the 42 I did manage to speak to, the 360 I didn't, you know, whatever the cost per lead becomes for that is invaluable to me, much better than going and trying to buy a list or, you know, anything else that might happen. That's really, you know, solid information that I can use to market with.
That's pretty cool. What were the systems or the feeds you were talking about feeding into that to give this visibility?
Yeah, the question was, what was the feeds and the sort of systems that are feeding in to give this sort of visibility? This particular company, and there's a few of them around now that are doing this, but having talked to these particular guys, they're feeding from pretty much anything from the event system that's got all the registration info, the email automation systems that they're, you know, sending out the emails about the event and so on, the mobile app, because there's a ton of information they're engaging with on the mobile app, you know, what they're doing there, public feeds of Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere where they're commenting in public, they're grabbing that information too. So they're grabbing from all sorts of areas to give you that overview, not just from one particular silo, but from maybe 10, 15 different places. And finally, just to finish up, I'm sort of going to digress a bit from the event side, because I want to lead into what Ron's about to talk with. We've been leading into the marketing technology, which is the key theme around what we're talking about today. This email is something that I got from ATT Uverse, who are our provider for our internet and our cable at home. And I get, gosh, like all of you, I'm sure we get hundreds of emails a day, yeah? And most of them I hit delete, 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 because they're not engaging at all. This one was telling me that the final season of Boardwalk Empire was coming up. Check it out. Big deal. I don't even watch Boardwalk Empire, so don't promote that to me. I'm not interested. I'm sure it's a great show, but it's not one that I've watched. So it's a classic example of my provider who's got a ton of information about me, not really engaging me personally. Yeah. So let's look at the other end of the spectrum and say, who's a Dexter fan here, by the way? Anyone? A few of the speakers, yep. For those of you that aren't aware or are not sure what Dexter is, it was a TV show that finished, I think, last year. It was about a police blood spatter expert that worked for Miami Police Force, and he was also a serial killer. But he only killed bad guys, so sort of kind of made him good. But anyway, it became a very, very popular series. And I think this was only after about the second series, one of the things that the makers of that particular show did was they put out this viral campaign. So you could, I'm just going to pray to the internet gods here that we're going to get a live feed. And, yep, okay. So, to go down a bit further. So this, you could go to the website, they sent an email campaign out about this. So if you wanted to really engage someone else about this particular show, you put in your details here. So I'm just going to quickly fill this out. You could upload a photo of yourself. Then, come on, internet gods, do it for me. When you did this, if we get it going right here, you'll see a picture come up here in a minute. And then you could put details about your friend in here as well that you wanted this to go to. So, and of course, we're probably not going to get it by the looks. And we'll try that again. And anyway, for the sake of times, I'll go and put our friend's details in, if it will let us. Maybe now we're right. Yeah, there we go. Yep, and of course now I've got to go back and fill my details in because I lost those. Okay, so now you can put your friends' names in, and I'm going to use Suzanne as my friend here. Their email address. How old are they? So you got asked a few questions here. How old are they? And Suzanne, of course, is in her early 30s. What do they do? I don't know if there was a marketing one here, but we'll. Oh, there it is. Yep, marketing. And what would a journalist ask about your target? I'm going to try to be nice to you here, Suzanne. Maybe a lack of cleaning skills. How about that? That's fine. Okay. So what this would do would be now send an email off to Suzanne, and when she got her email, instead of getting that boring old, hey, Boardwalk Empire starting next week, preview it here, she would click on that email and get this video that.
Us live to the press conference to find out the latest.
Good afternoon. As many of you are aware, yesterday morning, police divers recovered the mutilated remains of 9 bodies. I can now confirm that the method in which the victims were dismembered does match that of the Miami serial killer known as the Bay Harbor Butcher. The disposal of the bodies at sea further suggests that this is not a coincidence.
Does this mean there's a copycat killer in the UK?
That's a very real possibility, yes. We subsequently discovered this document on one of the bodies.
Suzanne's name's
which
on the
we
list.
believe to be a list of victims and future targets. We strongly recommend anyone who recognises their name on this list not to panic,
And you'll see it
but
coming
to
up on the
remain
ticker tape
vigilant at
too.
all times.
Is it true that he only kills people that are in their early 30s?
So far, yes, that is correct.
Why is he specifically targeting people that work in marketing?
Well, if he has similar motives to the Bay Harbour butcher, then he believes that these people are inherently evil and that they deserve to die.
Do you have any suspects yet?
Yes, we believe that this person may be linked to the murders. We want to know who this person is, and we want to know where they are. Only one more question, please.
Is it true he only kills people who never clean up?
No comment. I think that's a suitable place at which to stop. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
One more, please, Superintendent. Thank you.
So, as you can see, that's a much more compelling way to engage people than just a very static email saying, hey, click here to see the latest preview, right? If I got that email in my inbox, I'm going to watch that. I'm going to be excited. Now I'm going to want to watch the show because it's really engaged me. So, with that, thank you very much. Any questions on the event side? No? In that case, we're moving on to our final speaker, which is Ron. He's going to talk about marketing technology. Thanks very much, everybody.
Yeah, and we'll take another kind of 5 or so minute break while Ron sets up. The last thing, I just have one comment though on the event stuff. No, you can get up still, but it goes back to again the data part. And I'd say that events, live events especially, or anytime you have an event, it probably is the best place to collect all this behavioral data. And so often it's not done because the event people. Steve and I had the joy of working together, and we would talk to the event team, and we'd say, like, they would take down, are they going to get fish, or are they going to get the chicken, or the filet mignon, and having all those choices, right? The event people have tons of knowledge. They know who's gluten-free, they know who's a vegan, they know all this stuff, and then somehow that doesn't make it into the master database. Or that kind of content, being able to collect it, are the door scans, and knowing who came to the door and who didn't, and which session they went to. Most associations don't track sessions and the attendance per class. Having that type of stuff, which, by the way, corporates do check that. They do that. They get all the session selections, how long you were in the session, what you did, and associations tend to not do that. But that type of data is invaluable. And so like what the for-profits do on the event side with that data is incredible in how they can put that together. But a lot of times it's because the event team doesn't think in terms of data. They're thinking in terms of cost, or they're thinking in terms of, it wouldn't even occur to them to gather that or to collect that. So the marketing and IT, we're seeing those systems come together, and maybe, again, the event, sometimes people are in their own isolated island, or just like the annual conference is different than the rest of the other conference and registrations you do. So we're seeing a tendency to try to start now pulling those together. And we do a lot of work with pulling in event system data into and automating into emails and things like that. So just make that comment.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Suzanne. And just to finish up on that, the problem that a lot of us have is that the people running the events are operationally focused. And so their job is about logistics and getting that event run and checking all the boxes. They're not thinking about the marketing potential. So marketing and events need to be in lockstep and should be one and the same. And don't leave the planning for the event purely up to the operational people. Make sure that marketing is very, very heavily involved in that, because you're the ones that are going to benefit the most from that data.
Yeah, excellent point. Okay, so thanks again, and another 5 or so minutes, and we'll kind of meet back, and we'll have Ron McGrath.